How's it going, YouTube? Yeah, Pat Mack here, coach of the Sacramento Sand Slash, playing in PBA. This is week 3 up against WreckItMike, coach of the Virginia Victinis. And you can see up on the screen the team that I'm bringing for this match. But before I start talking about the team, I want to first talk about the type of content that you're going to see today, because it's very different from what I'm planning on doing for other types of content that I've had. Most battles that I have, like I am talking and commentating the video live. I usually have a more analytical approach to my decision making, and you get to see my reaction in the moment. But this is going to be very different. This is a video that, unfortunately, when I recorded it, I didn't have my voice audio set up correctly, so all we have are the in-game sounds for it. And so I'm going to take a much more analytical approach to this video and talk about all of the choices that I make across this game. And I'll let you know right now, this is a total of 27 turns in the entire match. And I'm going to look at all of them. And I'm going to categorize each of the turns as either a mistake, a choice that was questionable, and like there were some reasons behind it, but it also like may or may not have been a good choice. And then the last one, I'll either describe it as what I think was the best choice in that moment. And so the type of content is very different. If it's something that you enjoy, definitely let me know, and I can try to do videos like this in the future. But it's gonna be less of like the flow of the battle that you would normally see from a match, and very much like I'm gonna look at each turn kind of individually. And so it's gonna look and feel very different from normal gameplay, normal videos that I've done in the past. So anyway, like I said, let me know what you think. If it's something that you enjoyed, then I can do more videos like this in the future. So you've been able to take a look at the team that I'm bringing up on the screen for a little while now. Let me talk about the general game plan for this. Our plan was to win with Volcarona. I had the set that I do as a way to potentially set up multiple times with like Morning Sun, so I can maybe Quiver Dance once or twice, then Morning Sun to heal back up, and then I can use my attacks, or I can also swap out and try to do it again later while still keeping myself a little bit healthy. The precursors to this win condition for Volcarona to be able to win against their team is that I needed chip damage on Garchomp and Rotom-wash to be able to hit those two mons. I could potentially set up on Rotom-wash, but yeah, it's maybe fire type, water type, that kind of thing. And then Garchomp could potentially have a rock move, so I need to have chip damage on that one in order to OHKO it after I get to +1. And then I also have no way, you can see Fire Dance and Bug Buzz, no way to hit Talonflame, so I need that Mon KO'd. If I get those three things set up correctly, then Volcarona can come in, sweep, and win the game. Part of the way for that to happen is to have Great Tusk. I can catch it with Rock Slide. Talonflame is almost certainly their check to this Mon. And then I have like a revenge killing Roaring Moon, just because freaking chien-pao is so crazy. And then of course Sun helps my photosynthesis mons. So that was kind of the generic game plan coming into this team. And so a lot of the decisions and what I talk about are going to be based on how well did they support my end game plan. So anyway, let's go and take a look at the very beginning of the match, because honestly, aside from prep, the match starts as soon as you pick which Pokemon you want to lead with. So looking at this match, I decided I wanted to lead with our Sylveon. I thought it was good against pretty much everything aside from the Goldengo. Even Talonflame, like I'm fine with being in front of that. So like Hyper Voice wouldn't do much damage, but I do have Shadow Ball. I could Wish in front of it, that kind of thing. And I'm pretty physically defensive, so I'd be able to take a hit from it. And again, the game plan is to KO Talonflame. So if I can get chip damage on that one, wear it down, then I'm in a much better spot. So Sylveon was the main game plan here. I think this was the correct decision on what to lead with, because if they decide to lead Goldengo, I think I have a great sit-in with Arboliva, and if they lead Talonflame, I could potentially go into Torkoal, or just decide to get chip damage on that way and like Baton Pass or something like that. So I felt like I had some options if there were leads that I wasn't very competitive against. Yeah, so that was the first turn, deciding exactly what I want to lead with, very important. But I think I made a good decision here. I don't think there's necessarily a Mon that I would have wanted to lead differently. I guess the only one that I would consider instead of Sylveon would be Torkoal, but if this Garchomp is a defensive like rocks, spikes, lead Garchomp, then I have to switch out immediately with Torkoal anyway, so it's just better that I start with Sylveon, I think. So here we are in the first turn of the match, and I get a lead that is totally fine. Like, Sylveon can definitely deal with the Rotom. I have a ton of different options. Like, I'm very split F, and Rotom isn't going to do a whole lot of damage to me. And here I think this is, on the very first turn of the game, I think I make a pretty big mistake. So you'll see in a moment that I decide to Baton Pass. And Baton Pass, I think, is a huge mistake here. I think very easily the option is just Hyper Voice. The only Pokemon, like, there are two Pokemon that could come in to take a Hyper Voice if he's expecting it. It's Goldengo and it's Talonflame. I think I have a great switch into Goldengo with Arboliva. That mon is also very split F. I have Earth Power as a way to hit it. Like, I can deal good damage to it, and I don't take too much damage from their Goldengo. And then I also have Shadow Ball, like, if I want to try to hit it, but very unlikely that I'd go for that option. But either way, I think Hyper Voice was 100% the play here. Getting chip damage on this also helps Roaring Moon as a breaking option, because it's very likely, just from prep kind of standpoint, that this Talonflame, the rotom-wash is likely to be physically defensive. And the reason for that is that it's physically defensive. It's very good against Roaring Moon. It's very good against Great Tusk. So it really makes sense for this mon to be a physically defensive variant. And so Hyper Voice just gets chip on damage on it. It helps my breakers with Roaring Moon and Great Tusk to put in a lot of work. Now, the reason I went for the Baton Pass in the moment was that I was expecting a Volt Switch. I thought that was a likely option from them, just because, like, I'm not going to bring my Great Tusk in against this Pokemon. There's just no way that's happening. And so if they had Volt Switched, I thought maybe they go into Goldengo, and if I can Baton Pass, then I can go into, like, Torkoal to get rocks up. But I think that it's better for me to just get chip damage on this one. To get Hyper Voice damage on the Goldengo, I have a great switch in with, like, Arboliva, like I said. And yeah, so I think that this was just a mistake just from right off the bat. And this is how the turn plays out, at least. On turn 2, after I Baton Passed into Arboliva here, I think I made the best choice that I could have made. Of course, my Arboliva has 4 different options. It has Weather Ball, it has Energy Ball, Hyper Voice, and Earth Power. And in this instance, I chose to use Hyper Voice. And I think that this was my best option here, because the only mon that would take no damage from this would be Goldengo. And Arboliva is here for Goldengo. Like, this is the mon that I want to be able to deal with. And so if it switches in on a Hyper Voice, then I could just Earth Power it the next turn, or use any other kind of move. And the Hyper Voice catches Talonflame, which would also be a very likely switch in to this Pokemon, just because like, Grass Move obviously makes a lot of sense here, hitting the rotom-wash, and so predicting the Talonflame to come in puts damage on that mon that threatens my win condition. And like I said, I'm okay with a switch in of Goldengo, just because, like, this Pokemon is here to handle Goldengo. So we can see from the last turn that this reveals that it has Protect, which is, like, not a big deal. I guess this is just scouting from his side of things to wonder what I'm going to go into. On this turn, I end up clicking Hyper Voice again. Same deal as before. If Goldengo switches in, then I'm fine with it. So this turn is essentially, like, last turn was essentially a wash, and this turn I'd make the exact same decision as last one. There is a case to be made for me switching to Earth Power, expecting the Goldengo to come in, but in all honesty, it doesn't matter. It's the same reasoning as the last turn. So this was a huge surprise. I did not expect for a moment that Garchomp was going to be the switch into this Pokemon. Like, Dragon move, whatever, right? Like, I have enough bulk to be able to handle that. And, like, Ground move isn't happening. So this was a very, very interesting choice from my opponent to bring this in. But honestly, there is no reason for me to make any sort of prediction, any kind of swap. Like, he brought this Pokemon in on me. It doesn't deal much damage to me, and I have Energy Ball to hit it for solid damage. So this was a very easy Energy Ball. There's no real reason for him to make another switch, and there's no real reason for me to make a prediction. So here we are on turn 4, and this I think was my first questionable decision. Like, I had one that was a mistake earlier. I think this one's a bit questionable. I end up choosing to go for Earth Power. And my reasoning for this is that I think for sure he's swapping, and if he doesn't swap, then I can hit him anyway. But I think he's swapping, and I think he's going Goldengo, because so far I've revealed Energy Ball and I've revealed Hyper Voice. Both of those moves Goldengo can deal with. And so this turn was a prediction on Goldengo switching in. But I really think that it was an unnecessary prediction. Like I said, this Pokemon is here to deal with Goldengo. There isn't really a reason for me to click Earth Power unless Goldengo is actually in front of me, I think. And so, spoiler on the turn, I end up catching Goldengo switching in. And so I end up getting like a good read out of this. But I don't think that this was a great option because Talonflame also could switch into this pretty well. But I felt fairly certain that he was going to switch out because my last turn I got a crit Energy Ball that dropped his Spadef. And another Energy Ball is likely to deal approximately the same amount of damage, which looks like it would probably KO. Especially because of that Spadef drop. If I didn't get the Spadef drop, then maybe I would have gone for Energy Ball again, but that last turn, like, crit and Spadef drop, kind of really good, you know? But I think I make an unnecessary prediction here because, again, the game plan is to KO the Talonflame, right? And I need to not allow that Pokemon to get in for free. And so Hyper Voice, I think, was the better option here. Because, again, if the Goldengo switches in, then I can hit it with Earth Power. So I end up going for Earth Power here. I end up catching the Goldengo switching in as well. And you'll see exactly how much damage it does to that Mon. So coming in this next turn, based on the Earth Power damage that we saw, I don't think he's here to just sacrifice his Goldengo to deal not very much damage to an Arboliva. So I end up going for Hyper Voice on this play, and I think that this is like a questionable play. Like, I kind of defended a little bit, but I think it's a little bit questionable. So obviously this is expecting either Garchomp to come back in, or it's expecting the Talonflame to come in. And I think that if I'm expecting the Talonflame to come in, then it's worthwhile for me to actually swap into Torkoal here and try to get my own hazards up. Because as we can see, right, there's been, like, we're on turn like 5, we're on like turn 5, and he's already switched in to show me 3 of his Pokemon, right? I've seen the Rotom, I've seen the Garchomp, and I've seen the Goldengo. And I'm pretty sure that this was switching out, so I'm going to see another Pokemon. So having Rocks up, I think, would have been kind of nice to go into Torkoal here. I get Sun up. I'm pretty good against the Talonflame. So if I'm expecting that, I could have just gone into I could have gone into Torkoal, and I think that would have been a pretty defensible position. The other option was, like, this one also could recover, right? Like, it has recover. It has Focus Blast. So those are also options from their side of things. And so Hyper Voice is like a very questionable play because they could just try to stay in front of this and take another hit, recover, but they end up being at about the same spot if I decide to Earth Power. So I think this move is defensible to go for Hyper Voice here, but I think that it's a questionable play because I think that it's also fairly punishable in several different ways. So coming into turn 6, or I guess this is turn 7. Yeah, this is turn 7. So coming into turn 7, I end up swapping out Arboliva here, and I end up switching into Sylveon, which is like, let me explain what I was thinking at the time, even if I think this is a questionable decision. So at the time, I was thinking rocks are up, and I was thinking my Torkoal isn't wearing boots, so I would take rocks damage if I switched into Torkoal. I think that like switching into Torkoal was an opportunity for rocks here, cause like I feel like trying to explain this one's a little weird. So like they have a couple different options, right? The things that are most likely in front of this Pokemon are U-turn, Roost, or Brave Bird, and I feel like any of those options are defensible from their side of things. Obviously, like I can't stay in with Arboliva if they go for Brave Bird or U-turn, right? Like I just take way too much damage. I can no longer check the Pokemon that I've been trying to check. And so like those two, like the two attacking options, Torkoal makes a little bit of sense in, let me back up. If they Roost or if they Brave Bird, then Torkoal's a great option. However, if they U-turn, then Torkoal isn't a great option. So I go into Sylveon here thinking like they're going to U-turn, and so I have leftovers recovery, plus like I get a little bit of health back even though I take some rocks damage. But I think this is like a kind of a questionable one, and it kind of goes back to like the last turn that I talked about. If I was expecting Talonflame to come in, I don't think I should have Hyper Voice. I think I just should have swapped into Torkoal in that moment so that I could get my hazards up. So this one I think is kind of a questionable decision. It seems a little weird to go into Sylveon here because like Hyper Voice against a fire type doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But this this swap into Sylveon is kind of expecting a U-turn. And we'll see how the turn goes here right now. So I'm going to skip over this turn and the next turn, actually. Essentially what happens is he misses Population Bomb here, and I go for Hyper Voice. Going for Hyper Voice in my position is 100% the best play. This Pokemon, Mousehold with Population Bomb, literally OHKOs or 2-hit KOs every Pokemon on my team. It's wild. I don't think I remember looking at calcs for this when I was prepping, but this Pokemon is kind of crazy. I didn't realize how much damage it can do. A 10-hit Population Bomb, like I said, OHKOs or 2-hit KOs every Pokemon on my team. So it makes sense for me to stay in. Like this Pokemon is not super necessary. Like I'm able to check a lot of stuff with Arboliva. And I can't really swap in anything else, right? I'm not ready to sack anything else. So best option I think for me is to stay in. So I go for Hyper Voice. And this turn, I get paralyzed and they miss their Population Bomb. Kind of tells me they're not Wide Lens. But it's a wash turn, so I'm just going to skip it for you all. The next turn, he gets a 3-hit Hyper Voice, not 3-hit Hyper Voice. That would be insane, by the way. It's a 3-hit Population Bomb, and I Hyper Voice again. And then the turn after that, that's the one that I'll go ahead and skip to so that you can watch. I go for Hyper Voice again. Maybe he misses another Population Bomb, but you'll see what happens in just a moment. So after they get that 7-hit Population Bomb and Sylveon faints, I have to go into Roaring Moon. Like I'm essentially forced to make this play because of how terrifying this Pokemon is. Now, I think the best option here is to U-turn. I deal a ton of damage into this. Maybe I get Sunset up and then I try to get some damage from them from there. They don't know what kind of set I'm in that I have, so I think it makes a lot of sense for them to go Rotom-wash. Just because Rotom-wash is the most likely switch into this. It's likely to be very physically defensive, like I mentioned earlier in Team Preview. And so U-turn catches that on, and I get to pivot out, and that gets me into Arboliva pretty freely. So I think this is the best option for me to go for U-turn, because I think their play is super obvious. Now, if they were to stay in and Population Bomb, I don't think it makes sense for them to do that. I think because they have good switch-ins, it makes sense for them to swap. But if they had stayed in, I'd be in a pretty bad position, to be honest. But I think that this is still the best play because their path or their play pattern right here makes a ton of sense for them to save this because of how terrifying it is for my team to deal with. And so U-turn, I think, that I choose here is the best option. So as you can see from this turn, you can see that they're about to use Protect. So I'm actually going to skip this turn, and I'll kind of talk about the next turn that's here, but I just want to briefly mention what happens here. I go for Hyper Voice, they go Protect. So they get to see what move I have. They get a little bit of leftover recovery. The next turn that's in front of me, I end up going for Earth Power, and so that's the one that you'll end up watching happening. I go for Earth Power, expecting the Gholdengo to swap in, and I think that this is... There's kind of some layers to this particular play. So they've seen that I'm willing to go for a Hyper Voice right here. What's the reason for me to change my move, right? And so like having Gholdengo comes in feels like a likely play from their side of things. Now the other side of this is, so I end up going for Earth Power. And so catching the Gholdengo is kind of the idea there. However, the other side of this is that I know for sure that they can't go into Talonflame, which is the one that they went in on earlier. So the Earth Power is a pretty safe play, and there's no way that they're going to stay in, right? If I Hyper Voice this, then it gets damage on it, and that frees up some of my other options that they need this to check. And the Gholdengo doesn't seem like it's going to be that great against what I have on the team. I have Torkoal and Volcarona that both threaten it. Arboliva deals with it just fine. My Roaring Moon, actually every Pokemon on my team hits it for super effective damage, so like them sacking Gholdengo makes some sense here. And the other side of this is that the Talonflame is super unlikely because of how much damage I was able to deal with Hyper Voice earlier, so there's no way it's switching in. So I expect the Gholdengo to switch in here. So after I pick up that Gholdengo kill, they decide to bring in Chien-pao. And this Pokemon is terrifying. So I have to swap pretty much because I need this Pokemon to try to deal some damage to the Rotom-wash. It's easily my best switch in to be able to deal with that Mon. And then I also would like to be able to switch in on the Garchomp. Although I've been able to get it suitably chipped that Volcarona after a Quiver Dance would be able to KO it. But I assume that I am going to want this Mon to be able to switch into the Rotom-wash. It kind of is the similar play pattern that we had before. If something gets KO'd, I can bring in Roaring Moon. I can U-turn on the obvious Rotom-wash switch in and go into Arboliva. So I kind of want the Pokemon around for that play pattern. And so I decided to switch into Torkoal here. And I think that this is my best decision. This Pokemon, it's pretty physically defensive, so it's kind of meant to be able to take a hit from this Pokemon. And I'm kind of hoping that I get a chance to set up Stealth Rock. The other flip side of this option is that I could have also stayed in with Arboliva, sacrificed it, and I would have had no Pokemon that was able to deal with the Rotom-wash very well, which doesn't seem like a great decision, but it does allow me to get in Torkoal after this for a pretty solid option, or I can also go into Great Tusk as a solid option as well. But either way, I think this is still the best play to swap out, preserve this so that I can at least have a threat to the Rotom-wash and get chip damage on some of those other Pokemon. Arboliva does quite a bit of damage throughout the match that you've seen so far, and so my hope is that it's continuing to be able to put in quite a bit of damage on the rest of their team. I take a moment during this turn to calculate how much damage that did, because this is a Torkoal, right? This Pokemon has an insane defense stat, And I find out at this point that this chien-pao is banded for sure. It might also be adamant banded. It might be jolly band, might be adamant band. Honestly, that part is not super important. This is banded, so I know for sure that it's locked into a dark move, which means that I should be able to go into Great Tusk on the next turn. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for me to go into Great Tusk this turn because honestly, this Torkoal's at 3 HP. Like, what else is it going to do in the match? So I make the choice to sacrifice Torkoal here, and I go into Great Tusk. And, like, yes, this Pokemon, like, their chien-pao is just going to KO me, so it makes sense for me to drop this and then just go into Great Tusk on the next turn. So this is another moment in the game where I 100% just straight up make a mistake. Like, this decision is pretty much indefensible. Like, I should not have made this choice. I end up going for knockoff, and knockoff is a terrible idea here. I have Lumberry to be able to take a Flame Body Burn from the Talonflame. However, there is literally zero reason for me to risk that. Talonflame is the switch in. Like, it just is. It could be rotom-wash technically, but it's very unlikely to be rotom-wash. It's probably going to be Talonflame. And so I 100% just should have gone for Rock Slide here. If the rotom-wash comes in, fine, whatever. Like, I can just stay in and hit it again, or I can go into Arboliva. Just because I'm faster than it, so I know I can deal that damage. However, it makes zero sense for me to go for knockoff here. I think in my mind at the time, I was thinking rotom-wash is a possibility for what might switch in, and so I could potentially go for knockoff to catch the leftovers on that Pokemon. However, there's literally no point. I just should go for Rock Slide because the danger of Flame Body from Talonflame is just simply too high. And if I get Flame Body burned, like, life is over for me. Like, this Great Tusk becomes like a mini Tusk. Like, it is not a terrifying threat. So here I make a massive mistake that potentially I make a mistake that potentially has huge game-changing ramifications, and so we'll end up watching what happens. That knockoff couldn't have been more punished. Now, as you saw, I had Lumberry, so I was able to get around the Flame Body Burn. But not only did I not pick up the KO, but I also used my Lumberry. This Talonflame is going to have Will-O-Wisp, and I was debating about what I wanted to do right here because of that. But both of the Pokemon that I would have considered switching into this Pokemon, into Talonflame, were Torkoal and Sylveon, and both of those have been KO'd. Now, I defend my position to KO them earlier, but honestly, I just made a mistake for going for knockoff. I just 100% should have gone for Rock Slide. Rock Slide easily picks up the KO here, and I'd be in such a good spot. However, Dunce Cap moment, I had to freaking go for knockoff and don't pick up the KO and get burned. And now I pretty much have to go for another attack, and so I go for Rock Slide here, which is the move that I just should have gone for last turn. So they end up bringing in rotom-wash, which is kind of okay for me because I have Arboliva as a switch-in. But I end up deciding to stay in with Great Tusker. I don't decide to swap in Arboliva. My reasoning for that is that if they do have Volt Switch, then I'm just in a bad spot. They bring in chien-pao or they bring in Mousehold, and like I'm just not in a good position. I decided to stay in because I also just want to get chip damage on this. I end up going for play rough, but I think it's kind of a questionable decision. I think I probably should have gone for knockoff in this instance, because I could have knocked off the leftovers on the rotom, or I could have just knocked off whatever item decided to come in. Knocking off choice band like is both good and bad for me on the chien-pao, but chien-pao's not coming in on this. If they volt switch here, it's going to be Mousehold, almost for sure actually. And if they could technically go to Garchomp, I guess, but I'm Terra Fairy. I just don't see it likely that they would do that. So I go for play rough. This kind of catches switch-ins if they decide to go for him, but again, like I said, not likely. Well, they're actually going to be slower, right? So I'm going to hit this and then they'll swap. But the decision here is to get chip damage on this mon, but I think that knockoff was just a much better opportunity. So I could get rid of this leftovers on this mon and try to take over the game from there. If I get this chip, then it helps Volcarona to be able to set up, which I think would be a good opportunity. I have to be a little careful about Volcarona trying to set up on this though, because it does have T-Wave, but maybe I can try to get like 2 Quiver Dances up, or Quiver Dance then break and like let Roaring Moon win in the end game. So there's some thought process going on there for this decision, but knockoff I think was just the better option here, even if it's likely that they go for protect. So remember these mice? Yeah, after they volt switch, they decide to bring these in. Absolutely terrifying Pokemon, like I mentioned earlier. I have to stay in, and I go for EQ right here. The hope is that their population bomb doesn't hit 10 times, but I am Great Tusk, and I have Great Tusk has an absolutely insane defense stat, even if I'm not particularly bulky on this set. So there's a chance that I can live quite a few pop bombs, and hopefully I can get that going so that I can live, and then yeah, I can just KO with Earthquake. But I think the 100% best play to go for is Earthquake here. We also got to see how little damage that play rough did. Like, God, imagine if I hadn't made that mistake earlier and I wasn't burned. Oh, I'd be such a good spot. Anyway, so mad about that. But yeah, so I think going for Earthquake here is just the best option. I have a chance to pick up damage on them, and you can see they're about to go for Population Bomb. There's no other move that they would go for. So this turn I end up making the knockoff play, and I think that so they end up protecting on this turn, so I make the knockoff play on this turn when they protect, and then I end up going for a knockoff again. This instance is a little, I kind of go back and forth about how I feel on this one. So I'm going to put this one as a questionable choice here, and my reason for that is for both the turns essentially. If I go for a knockoff, I get the leftovers, right? But the next turn, well, they can protect, then I get burn damage, then they go into Garchomp, and then they get the chip damage from the helmet ability, rough skin. There we go. They can get it from rough skin. And so I think my next turn, I think I actually could have gone for play rough, and I think that could have been a defensible option against the rotom-wash as well. They get the chance for leftovers recovery still, which is like part of the reason knockoff would have been kind of cool. But basically all the damage that's on rotom-wash right now is from a play rough, right? So if I were to get another play rough on this, I'd do another, like, I don't know, that's around 25 to 30% ish. I get another 25 to 30% on this Pokemon if it decides to stay in and picks up the KO with like Volt Switch, for example. And if they go Garchomp, then I KO in one shot. If they go Chien-pao, which there's no way they would do that. Basically, it's one of those two things. They're either staying in or they're going Garchomp. And so I think Play Rough was actually the best call here in this instance, because the leftovers recovery isn't going to be a significant amount, but it would be much better for me to get some damage on this to help out with what's looking to be a Roaring Moon like Outrage endgame. And so just because it doesn't look like Volcarona is going to be able to set up on anything that's left here, it's probably just going to be able to hit like one thing with a Bug Buzz or Fiery Dance kind of idea. So I think that Play Rough is just the best option in this scenario. just get as much damage as I can, go for a an end game of Outrage on our Roaring Moon. So like I said, I think that this one, I think I could have gone for Play Rough as a better option. I don't know if I would say per se that this is a mistake. I think that it's an okay option to do knockoff, but I think that Play Rough was probably a better one. I end up going into Arboliva here, but I also kind of think that there's a potential option to go into Volcarona, just because the Volcarona has a good amount of defense and some HP on it, and this Pokemon is low. So I think there's a case to be made for this would have been an opportunity to try to go for Quiver Dance. I was a little scared that this Mon might have a rock move of some kind, which would be super terrible for Volcarona. So like, the safe switch in here is Arboliva, and I think that it makes some sense to do that. But I think this was maybe the last opportunity that I had to really set up with Volcarona. I could potentially get like one Quiver Dance off against the rotom-wash, but I'd be like really banking on them using Thunder Wave and missing, essentially. So yeah, I think that it's probably just better for me to have gone into Arboliva like this, but I do want to kind of point that out that I was looking for a Volcarona endgame. This was a possible shot for me to try to go for it. Anyway, so let's actually talk about the decision I make in this position. I end up going for Energy Ball here. Energy Ball hits everything that's on the opposing team at this point, for at the very least neutral damage or super effective damage, and it's going to be stab. So it's going to be better than Hyper Voice essentially. And I think that like once I decided to bring Arboliva in right here, this was the best choice that I could have made. So we pick up the Garchomp KO, which is nice, but that just means that this Pokemon gets to come in, and we 100% have to sack something to this thing. There's no Pokemon that can deal with this. So I definitely have to sacrifice Arboliva here, especially because an Ice move could potentially come out here. Very unlikely, because I think that lets Volcarona set up, which is kind of like I'm trying to get in a position where the chien-pao has to force itself into an Ice move, and then I could get a KO with Volcarona. Very difficult to make that scenario happen though, just because of what tools I have left over. So I basically have to sacrifice Arboliva here. I think it's the best option. There's not really a whole lot of other options here. And then I end up going into Roaring Moon. After I brought Roaring Moon in, I did have a consideration about what's my best option here. So let me kind of break down a few potential options. One, I could go, I could U-turn. U-turn obviously does super effective damage into this. I deal quite a bit. But that means that I have to go into Volcarona, and that's not necessarily the best option. Because I'm 100% going to die to whatever, if this attacks me again. The other option is that, like, if I U-turn, then maybe I could go into rotom-wash. But rotom-wash has quite a bit of chip on it, so it 100% is going to die to 2 Outrages. So I end up clicking Outrage here, because I think that if this stays in, I have a good chance of picking up the KO. If it doesn't stay in, then I will 2-hit KO the rotom-wash. So as you can see from the last couple of turns, after I've locked into Outrage, I've dealt damage to chien-pao, dealt damage to rotom-wash. Both of those Pokemon are easily within range of Volcarona. And so I'm at this point where I can either swap out and reset my Scarf / reset the Confusion and swap into Volcarona, or I can stay in. Now, staying in wins me the game if I don't get paralyzed. Or sorry, if I don't get confused. If I don't get confused, I KO with Outrage, and then I KO the chien-pao with Outrage. Now you could say that they could Ice Shard my Volcarona, or not my Volcarona, they could Ice Shard the Roaring Moon. However, if they did that, then Volcarona would come in, live an Ice Shard, and pick up the KO. So I am in a winning position if I don't get confused. And I end up staying in here because, you know, like, I don't see another out to this time, and I'm super low on time too. The game is about to end, and so I have to make decisions very, very quickly here. I end up staying in and relying on not getting hit by confusion. However, let me talk about the other option. If I swap into Volcarona here, Volcarona is at max HP. It does not come in at the battle at all, and so I would live essentially any hit that this Pokemon is going to go for. And I also reset my Choice Scarf on the Roaring Moon. Now, if I swap to Volcarona here, then I think I'm in a very good position because I have the opportunity to KO the Rotom-wash, and then I will pick up the KO on Chien-pao. Now, the downside of switching to Volcarona is that if they Volt Switch, then they get in Chien-pao, then they have to go for Dark Move. I would go back into Roaring Moon, pick up the KO with the Outrage or Crunch maybe, and then they would swap to let Rotom-wash go down, then they'd come back in and I tried to pick up the win. So this was a very much a decision about what move they're going to go for. If they go for basically anything else besides Volt Switch, then I think I have a winning position going into Volcarona. Because I pick up the KO with the Volcarona, like I mentioned, and then the chien-pao can't lock into a move that is going to win them the game. Because if they try to go into like Sucker Punch as their Choice Band move, then I can just Morning Sun or Quiver Dance, and then I'm in a great position to stall them out of Sucker Punches. And if they decide to, Volt Switch, then like I'm just not in a good spot. So this is a very interesting endgame. It's either two things. I'm either relying on RNG being in my favor, or I'm relying on my opponent's decision. I think the best option here is to rely on RNG, but I'm gonna be real with you, like, I've recorded this particular part like 3 or 4 times, and I'm still not 100% sure that this is the right choice. So this would be a really cool opportunity if you want to hop into the comments and let me know if you agree with the decision, you think this was the best option, or if you think that switching to Volk was the best option. And so I'm going to go and play here and you'll see the end game. I'm not going to talk about anything else after this point, so you'll see the end and then the video will end. And like I said, I really appreciate you sticking around to watch this. And definitely hop in the comments, let me know about what you think about this style of video. And this last question, right? What do you think of this endgame scenario?